After a dominant 41-7 victory, the Philadelphia Eagles have finally claimed the NFC East in 2024.
You are Locked On Eagles, your daily Philadelphia Eagles podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome on in, everyone, to yet another edition of the Locked On Eagles podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team each and every day. We are your daily Locked On Eagles show on the Philadelphia Eagles. I am excited here. I'm your host, Gino Camilleri, here to tell you that the Philadelphia Eagles have finally claimed the NFC East. They are the champions of the division in 2024, and for the 20th time in a row, the NFC East has a different winner. We're going to take in how this happened, how the Eagles were so dominant even without Jalen Hurts on the field. How good does it feel to beat the Cowboys, to claim the division yet again? But first, we are always brought to you by the Locked On Podcast Network, your team each and every day. If you haven't subscribed to the show, please do now. Leave us a like. Follow us on Twitter. You could follow me at GC24_football. So let's dive right in. The Philadelphia Eagles are champions of the NFC East. So how did it happen? Let's start from the beginning of this football game. We knew coming in we were not going to have Jalen Hurts out there. It was going to be difficult. After a game where will be tested in a loss like that to the Washington Commanders, the Philadelphia Eagles again, and I want to credit so much to Nick Sirianni and the coaching staff for getting them to bounce back. In a game where last year, San Francisco, Dallas, those games which ripped your heart out, and they were not able to bounce back from, that Washington game, if that was last year, they probably don't respond like they did today. But what did they do without QB1 and even QB2 for a majority of the football game? They went out there in a game that was quite reminiscent, not as sweet as 44-6, but 41-7 sure tastes just as fine. Will we remember it? I don't know. It's not the most put the poster up on your wall of the Kenny Pickett versus the Cooper Rush game, but I think from an Eagles team perspective, this game was awesome. Saquon Barkley goes for over 2,000 yards on the season. He's 101 yards away from eclipsing Eric Dickerson's record of the most rushing yards in a single season. Nick Sirianni recognized what was going on when Saquon eclipsed that 2,000-yard marker, and what did he do? He took a timeout and allowed Saquon Barkley to get his curtain call, to take in the crowd, just giving him his flowers in a game in Lincoln Financial Field, which I believe all of those Eagles fans today deserved. Because what it really came down to was team. It wasn't just one guy taking over this football game. Everybody did their part in a game where you weren't going to have your quarterback one who, after last week, what happened when Jalen went out of that game? It was tough sledding. In this game where Kenny Pickett is in there, he looked decisive. I thought he threw some very impressive balls to the sideline on some low percentage throws. He was accurate to Devontae Smith on a nice touchdown. And then he gets injured. And in comes Tanner McKee. You're down to your third quarterback with a chance to win the NFC East. And what happens? Do they just throw their hands up and say, we're just going to run Saquon, try and work as much time off the clock as we can, and just try and come out of here somehow with a victory? No. They said, Tanner McKee, we have this motto in Philadelphia, the next man up. When Jalen wasn't in there, when Kenny goes out, when Tanner McKee, who hasn't thrown a regular season pass in his entire career, comes into a game where the NFC East is on the line against a division opponent who the story is so much more than what is just happening in 2024. It's Eagles Cowboys. You know what this game was going to be. And we were talking about it all week. Mike McCarthy's gotten this team to respond. The Eagles kicked the ever-living crap out of them. Kicked the ever-living crap out of them from man number 1 to 53. Every single person did their job in this game on defense. 4 forced turnovers. 4. Chauncey Gardner-Johnson gets a pick 6 for the first touchdown of the game. He now has 6 on the season because he had 2 on the day, basically stole one from Quinyon Mitchell. They force multiple fumbles. Nolan Smith forces a fumble. Jordan Davis gets a fumble recovery as well after not Nakobe Dean. That was Oren Burks forced the fumble as well. This team is winning the turnover battle. Kenny Pickett and Tanner McKee combined for 0 turnovers today. 0! That's as good as you could ask from QB 2 and 3 when they weren't not throwing the football. They threw the ball 19 times. That's a pretty high amount for 2 backups. Kenny goes 10 for 15, 143 and a touchdown. Tanner McKee goes 3 for 4, 54 yards and 2 touchdowns. His only incompletion was a back shoulder dime to A.J. Brown on a one-handed catch that was 1 foot inbounds, and if it was in college, it would have been a touchdown. Next man up. That was the story of this game. When they were not able to step up last year, when they were quite literally the walking dead, nobody was doing their job. Not player 1 down to 53. Nobody was. The coaches weren't doing their job. Heck, Howie Roseman did a poor job getting that roster to compete after that 2022 season. 2024, every question has been answered. Every single question. What happens when adversity hits down the stretch? We figured it out, folks. This team will overcome adversity. And how do they do it? They play for each other. Look at the fun that these guys were having in this game. Maybe the coolest moment of the day was Tanner McKee throws the first touchdown of his career to A.J. Brown. A.J. Brown throws a 500 ball like he's playing in the parking lot when he was in elementary school up to a guy in the stands, doesn't realize it's Tanner McKee's first ball that he threw for a touchdown. All of a sudden, here comes Big Dom. He's coordinating, getting the ball back. A.J. Brown saying, "I'll sign my jersey and I'll give it to you." That felt... I was at the Chicago Bears game in 2017 when they were doing the electric slide and the vibes were through the roof. And I'm getting chills talking about this right now. That's what this game felt like today. It felt like a Philadelphia Eagles football game where they were having fun. It was the next man up. When the stars had to do their job, yeah, they were. When the guys who were not the bright names at the start of the season had to step up, the Kenny Pickett's, the Tanner McKees. Heck, Moro Ijoma is making plays. Oren Burks is forcing fumbles. These are the type of games that doesn't matter for Dallas. Not really. They're dead. They're in the middle of the pack. They're really just honestly hoping to lose to get a better draft spot. But for the Eagles, after that game against Washington, they could have rolled over, died, struggled to win this game. Outside of those first 2 offensive drives and a couple defensive drives in the beginning where Dallas was moving the ball well, they still allowed 7 points on the day, had multiple forced turnovers, were able to punch the ball into the end zone multiple times in the air, and that's without Jalen Hurts. And the icing on the cake, they win the NFC East before Week 18, something they really haven't been able to do in the last couple seasons. In 2022, it took Jalen Hurts having to come back a little bit banged up to get the divisional crown. Right now, you still have an outside chance at the 1 seed. It looks like you probably locked up the 2 seed today. But now we can look at the future. Do you rest a lot of these guys after Chauncey Gardner-Johnson is banged up in this game, and Nakobe Dean was out, and your quarterback 1 was out, quarterback 2 comes out of the game. Next week will probably be a rest week, but does Saquon Barkley have a chance to break Eric Dickerson's record? And we really have to talk about Saquon Barkley and the rest of this offense when we come back here on the Locked On Eagles podcast. So don't go anywhere. The Eagles are NFC East champs, and we're talking about it all here on the Locked On Eagles podcast. This episode of LOE is brought to you by our friends over at Rocket Money. Did Rocket Money help you find any subscriptions you forgot about or that you were paying for maybe multiple times? That definitely happened to me and my wife and a couple of my friends as well. I had a few subscriptions that I didn't even realize I was still paying for, and Rocket Money made it so easy to track them all down. It's like having a personal assistant for your finances. Rocket Money is a personal finance app that helps you find and cancel your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps lower your bills so you can grow your savings. It brings everything together in one place, whether it's subscriptions, your spending habits, or even the goals you want to hit this year. Rocket Money has over 5 million users and has saved a total of $500 million in canceled subscriptions, saving members up to $740 a year when using all of the app's premium features. So today, cancel your unwanted subscriptions and reach your financial goals faster with Rocket Money. Go to rocketmoney.com/lockedon today. That's rocketmoney.com/lockedon. Use Rocket Money to your advantage. rocketmoney.com/lockedon. All right, everyone. Cruising along here on this Victory Monday edition, well, technically still Sunday, but Victory Monday edition of the Locked On Eagles podcast. I'm your host, Gino Camilleri, and we are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Make sure you're subscribing to this show and every other show you are listening to. Hopefully all of the Philadelphia shows outside of the Locked On Eagles show have as much success as the Birds this year. Don't know about the Sixers. We'll see about the Flyers. But right now, it's the Birds, NFC East champs in 2024. And how did they get it done today? Well, I tweeted after the second drive that I didn't know if Kellen Moore really could figure out how to scheme up his guys when they don't have Jalen Hurts. That really was the tale of the second half last week, where Jalen's not in the game. Some of these plays that really depend on timing, depend on Jalen Hurts' athleticism, they weren't able to do that. But in this game, in the first two drives, it didn't really seem like they had much rhythm at all. That first sequence where they get on the field after the defense is on the field for 10 minutes, they go false start, they go just a bad overthrow, they go a throwaway, and then basically a swing bubble check down. We're surrendering this drive to Kenny Gainwell for no yards. The next time out, a lot of the same stuff. We see Saquon get the ball, and then we see him in a wildcat, and then we see them once again go 3 and out. And I'm saying, Kellen Moore, what are we doing here? Let's make this so easy. Yeah, the idea to throw it to A.J. Brown on that first drive, the first play on that slant, great idea. We just got to make this thing a lot easier. I thought they were not going to push the ball downfield this week. Boy, was I wrong, because after those first two drives, they really settled in and got things going. And what worked? Well, it was Saquon doing multiple things. They're able to toss, pin, pull, zone. You can run multiple different run schemes with Saquon, and they really unleashed a lot of them today. At the same time, when they had to pick up big first downs on third down conversions, they were able to do that because Kenny Pickett, I thought he had some accurate throws outside of the numbers today. And Devontae Smith, A.J. Brown, how good are those guys? I mean, Deron Bland, Andrew Booth, those guys were in a blender all day long. Tough assignment for those guys. But one thing I will say, Kellen Moore, when I thought he was crazy for following a lot of the same game plan that he did with Jalen Hurts, and they did a lot of that throughout the game. But they were doing it on one half of the field. And if that works for Kenny Pickett, and you say, yeah, Devontae, we're going to read half the field here. If you could beat this guy one-on-one, we're going to put it up there. That's how you're going to earn respect from every team that you play. knowing that even when your quarterback 3 is in the football game and he's throwing back shoulder dots to A.J. Brown, this Eagles offense is always going to be explosive. They're explosive on the ground. Saquon Barkley just rips off 10-plus yard runs like they're going out of style. The offensive line, once again, phenomenal game from the offensive line. Cam Jurgens, I don't think he is getting the respect that he deserves after Jason Kelce leaves. Let's just think about this for a second. You are expecting, let's say 30% minimum of a drop-off in play. What is the drop-off between Cam Jurgens and Jason Kelce right now? And Jason Kelce, Hall of Famer, we know what he did. But how good is Cam Jurgens playing right now? So much of this stuff in the run game, allowing your quarterback to hold onto the ball for as long as he does in the pass game, it's predicated on what your center does. He has been so good playing in unison with Landon Dickerson and Mekhi Becton. And those tackles are playing out there on islands, so those 3 guys inside are always, they're kind of doing this dance, and it all stems from Cam Jurgens. And in this game, when you're down to your 3rd string quarterback, it's all predicated on him, man. Everybody on the offense did their job. Kenny Gainwell, when he had to come in there, did his job. A.J. Brown dominated his one-on-ones. Devontae Smith dominated his one-on-ones. Grant Calcaterra, one of the best catches you're going to see in Philadelphia Eagles green. That one-handed catch, back shoulder, absolute gem. The A.J. Brown one from Tanner McKee that was a touchdown was beautiful. Perfect timing route on the back shoulder. The one that was out of bounds, that would have been the catch of the year if he makes that play. Saquon Barkley at the end, they just run you down. They're Floyd Mayweather the way that they run the football. They're efficient, effective. They cashed in the red zone. And they put up 41 points without Jalen Hurts in the lineup. They put up 41 points without Jalen Hurts in the lineup. Not against some AFC team like the Jets who got dummied by Buffalo again today. Against the Dallas Cowboys, who are your division rival, who these two teams hate each other, and it was clear there was some bad blood in this game right away. But what did the Eagles do this game that kind of bit them in the rear end last week? They talked with their pads. Yeah, they did some talking. They did some scuffling. Sidney Brown might have a future in whatever wrestling promotion he wants to go pro in after this. But they spoke with their pads, man. Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, the heartbeat of that defense. The guys on the interior, Jordan Davis being back, takes away the run. They were so good at setting the tone from the get-go. And even when the offense wasn't working at first, the defense is all reliable. 7 points. 7 points to a Dallas team that had won 4 out of their last 5. That's how you bounce back after what Jaden Daniels did last week. Everybody played their part. Even Kenny Gainwell, one of the kickoff returns today, brings out to the 39-yard line. Those little things where we were talking about where you got killed last week because Luke McCaffrey was doing that to you, and even though you won the turnover battle, you weren't cashing in the red zone. You did all of that today. That was pristine football. The way that you set the tone from the get-go after that pick 6. Let's just look at some of the things here where you won today. Penalties. 4 as opposed to Dallas's 8. Where last week, you basically went for 100 yards in terms of penalties. It was brutal. Chauncey Gardner-Johnson got kicked out of the game. You were disciplined. You were disciplined today. Turnovers. 4 to Dallas's forced 0. You're going to win a lot of the times when that happens. You got a nuclear play from Jaden Daniels last week where that happened, but when it's Cooper Rush, you're probably going to win those games a lot of the times. And they did. And I believe that was 9 turnovers on the season against the Dallas Cowboys. Not too shabby. Eagles 6 for 13 on third down. 1 for 1 on 4th down. They only allowed Dallas to convert 6 out of their 14 third downs. That's huge. 61 plays to Dallas's 60 plays. 32 minutes and 49 seconds to Dallas's 27 minutes and 11 seconds. 376 yards to Dallas's 268 yards. That's the story. That's the story. It was close in time of possession, but it was taking the ball away, moving the ball for long stretches at a time, and converting in the red zone. That's all it is. That's football. That's why you lost to Washington last week, and that's why you dominated today. In the little areas, which make a difference, that's where you won today. And that's what's going to take you far into the postseason. Those forced fumbles, the forced interceptions, finding ways and new plays that, hey, maybe we didn't think about these ideas when Jalen was in there, but Kenny's in there, and these little ideas that work in the red zone, maybe we start to implement some of those ideas. Kellen Moore answered the bell. Vic Fangio's defense once again answered the bell. But Nick Sirianni and this coaching staff, hats off to them, man. To get this team to perform the way they did today, that comes down to what they did Monday through Saturday. These guys got ready. They didn't sulk on last week. And guess what? They're NFC East champs in the year 2024. So what's next? We're going to figure out what happens in Week 18. Do the Eagles have a chance at the 1 seed? We will see. But what happens looking at the playoffs and moving forward in 2024 after the Eagles finally claim the NFC East? Come on back and finish up this edition of the Locked On Eagles podcast. All right, everyone, finishing up this Victory Monday edition of the Locked On Eagles podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, Gino Camilleri. Man, oh man, how good does that feel to beat the Dallas Cowboys 41-7 to win the NFC East? No, it was not 40-46, but it sure felt good. The first time the Eagles claimed the NFC East after defeating the Cowboys since 2013. And if you listen to the show this week, I did make reference to that game. That was the Brandon Boykin interception that clinched it while Kyle Orton was in. And that was the story today. Backup quarterbacks. Funny how this Eagles-Dallas rivalry is just riddled with backup quarterbacks in the 2010s and 2020s. Goodness, I mean, Trey Lance is in there at the end of the game, and Cooper Rush looked downright horrific, but the Eagles also had to play 2 backups, and their backups answered the bell. Because the Eagles coaching staff, Monday through Saturday, did a damn good job preparing them for the second time you play an opponent, which Nick Sirianni, he's talked about this the last couple weeks because obviously they played Washington last week and they played Dallas this week. They're going to finish off with the Giants. And he was saying how this second time that you play teams, it's difficult to approach it because you're going to take the things that you did well, obviously, right? But that team is going to try and take them away. So how do you kind of approach this? Well, Nick Sirianni said, yeah, try and stop what we do well, and we're going to do it better anyway. Saquon Barkley is a freak. 2,000 yards. 2,000 yards. The best signing Howie Roseman's ever made? Maybe. Possibly. He's winning Offensive Player of the Year. Chauncey Gardner-Johnson walks out the door in 2023, leaves 6 interceptions on the plate, comes back, gets those 6 interceptions right back. Quinyon Mitchell, dominant day again today. Darius Slay, dominant day again today. Oh, you're out Nakobe Dean? Well, Zach Baun's going to play lockdown, and a combination of Oren Burks and Jeremiah Trotter are going to go in there, and they're going to play damn good football. Nolan Smith looks like the first-round pick that you went out and got with that 30th selection. Everybody is figuring it out. This isn't just a game that really comes down to this season. This is a multiple season long culmination of what happened today. Seeing the areas where Howie Roseman knew that he was wrong. Failing to go and shore up the secondary and find those linebackers, and have a secure answer at the backup quarterback position. They answered all those questions today. Nick Sirianni, could he get back to overcoming adversity like he did in 2021? We didn't know if he could do that in 2023. That didn't just happen this season. So many things that happened today boiled down from the start of Sirianni's tenure and even years before that. Today felt great because it stuck to who they were and it stuck to who they knew they wanted to be all along. And you know what that is? A team that dominates and kicks rear end in the trenches, and they did that today. Their offensive line dominated. Dominated yet again. Their defensive line. Jalen Carter is a freak of nature. A freak of nature. When did they bring in Jalen Carter? Multiple seasons ago in the draft. When did they bring in Jordan Davis, who looked great? Nolan Smith, who looked great. Multiple seasons ago in the draft. Because those questions that were asked years ago, where Howie Roseman found out where his weaknesses were and he answered them. Nick has found out what his weaknesses were and he answered them. This win feels so much different. It's 41-7 over the Cowboys in a game where the Cowboys could have ruined the Eagles season, could have made them have to play into Week 18 and bring Jalen Hurts back and force the issue. They failed to do that last year. How do they lose the NFC East in 2023? How does that happen? How does that happen? Does it happen again in 2024? Does Howie Roseman make the same mistakes he made in 2023? Are the coordinator hires the right ones, unlike last year? This is a multiple season retool that finally sparked today. Today felt like the ultimate team victory. And what is in the forefront? Or what is in the future? The Philadelphia Eagles have a chance to go on a run where they can now rest Jalen Hurts realistically for 2 weeks. We had said on this show that, hey, they lost out on the 1 seed. That kills them when it comes to the bye. They haven't had a bye since week 5. Well, you might have just won a bye in week 18. What else is left to play for? Is the 1 seed there? Well, we will find out. The Green Bay Packers, they're currently taking on the Minnesota Vikings. If they beat the Vikings, and Detroit loses tomorrow, or tonight against San Francisco, the Philadelphia Eagles still have a chance at the 1 seed. But, the Eagles handled what they had to handle today. They didn't last week. Slipped out of their grasp. But instead of letting the Avalanche go down the hill, they put up a fight. And today, damn, they didn't knock the Cowboys out early, but they were just playing with their food all day long. 41-7 in a game where you'll look at the yardage totals, 376 to 268. Probably not going to say that's anything that was too dominant. But then you look at the turnover numbers and you look at what were they doing in the air. They couldn't do anything without CeeDee Lamb. Obviously, that's a big problem when you don't have that guy. But the Eagles, they did what they had to do. And next week, we'll see if Jalen Hurts comes back and plays in this game. We'll see if Saquon Barkley goes for 101 or more yards to break Eric Dickerson's record. We will see if they have a chance to play for the 1 seed. But in terms of controlling what they had to control, it was winning the NFC East at home against the Dallas Cowboys after a week where it was an emotional loss. They answered the bell. This 2024 Eagles team is exactly that. They are a team that when they're back, it's not up against the wall, but when somebody decides to put up a fight, as Nick Sirianni says, you might show that you're tougher, but the Philadelphia Eagles will show that they are tougher longer. And that'll do it for me, Gino Camilleri, host of the Locked On Eagles podcast, on this Victory Monday edition of the show. The Philadelphia Eagles are officially the NFC East champs in the year 2024. So make sure you subscribe to the show for this week. I will be hosting all the shows alone. Lou will be on vacation on a cruise. Soak it up, Lou. He was able to watch the game today, but take care, bud. We will see you soon. Safe travels. I will be joined, of course, by Patricia Traina on Thursday to take in Crossover Thursday, the Eagles and the Giants. But for the rest of the 3 shows and the Crossover Thursday edition this week, I will be back. So make sure you subscribe to this show here, the Locked On Eagles podcast, and all things Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Gino Camilleri. And until next time, how good does it feel to beat the Dallas Cowboys 41-7? I'm Gino Camilleri signing off. And as I always say, fly Eagles fly.